how our body is like a VR headset. So in
Mhm.
this world, we actually put on a VR headset and then we go into the game and we get to play the game. And he
Yeah.
said your soul puts on the VR headset that is the physical body.
Hmm.
And I just
Yep.
was like, damn,
Yeah.
what if we're robots?
Our body is like a limitation of what we are. It's not. Yeah, it's not the be all and end all of what we are. Like you can hear
Mm.
without ears, eardrums. You can taste without a mouth. You can see without eyeballs. So you can do these things. So what happens? Like even just the lucid dreaming proves that. You know,
Mm.
so you're not like you got a piece of cake in your mouth in bed when you're dreaming. You can taste it even though you're dreaming without the taste buds. Without you can see things without your eyeballs. You can so I think that has to come from somewhere that isn't our body.
Mm.
You know.
What is reality really made of? I am your host, Karla, and welcome to Cosmic Batter, the podcast where we explore stories of the unknown and my experience of becoming psychic. This is for anyone who realizes that there is so much more to the human existence. Hi everyone, this is Karla. I have to jump on and do an introduction today because my guest, Brad, once we started recording, we were straight off and I didn't even mention his name. So I'm jumping on now to do an introduction. Please welcome Brad. He is a friend and a client of mine, and he is a musician. He's a handpan musician. I really love his work because it's so intuitive and you can feel, I suppose, the awareness and the intention behind his work. And I loved having him on for a conversation because we talk about a lot of reality bending topics. What is reality? What is enlightenment? And something that I find super different, which is the unconscious death urge. And that's something we talk about at the end of the episode. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. Here is Brad now. I did have a question I wanted to start with.
Yeah, for sure.
What has the awakening process been like for you?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, that's a really good question. Um, so to get to the start of it would probably it was a lot of shedding to begin with. There was a lot of personality traits and behaviors and habits and stuff in my life um, that weren't serving the awakening process. So I think there was a certain amount of shedding that had to take place early on in my experience, the awakening experience, um, to sort of even start to cultivate the awareness of what to do or um, how to help that process along.
Mm.
Um, I'm nervous.
That's okay. It is a big question that I
Yeah,
open
straight
with
up. Yeah, big question.
because I was like, we've got
It's
even
hard
bigger
to sort of
questions to
encapsulate it
get
into
to.
one answer. It sort of, but there was a lot of shedding of some behaviors and personality traits that weren't serving me, and to feel those shift and move has been liberating.
Mm.
Probably the biggest thing. Um, but yeah, it's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, it like
Yeah,
there's multiple aspects
yeah,
to
yeah,
it.
yeah, for
And
sure.
like when I was chatting to Holly the other day for the other podcast, we were talking about so many topics and it flowed. And every single one, I was like, I could say 20 more things on
Yeah,
the
okay.
same topic,
Yeah.
but like it doesn't matter
But I would probably
because,
classify it as like a shedding. You know what I mean? There was a bunch of, yeah, just a bunch of stuff that needed to come to the surface and be processed that had been
mm,
sitting unconscious for so long, which can be quite uncomfortable, but also liberating when you do get through the other side of it for sure. Um,
yeah,
but that would probably be the biggest, probably the easiest way to explain it. I would say, you know, having a
yeah,
little harder of a childhood, you sort of you sort of develop these views of life, and just sort of behaviors and stuff that just that doesn't flow where we're trying to go. You know what I mean? So it all had to
mm,
sort of come apart and that happened in life, relationships, business, all sorts of stuff. It all just gets unpacked slowly but surely, and it can feel like a weight's been lifted in some way. Once you do get to that point of awakening, or it seems even cliche, it's cliche to say awakening, but yeah, just to have a clearer view of life and what it means to be in this life, and to be here and be present, and stuff like that. It all had to sort of shift, which is a massive paradigm shift in yeah. So there's
Mm.
tons of ways I could answer that, but just a lot of change and a lot of growth, you know.
Yeah, there's just two kind of things I want to say to that. So it's really interesting how we call it the awakening process, because I
Mm.
guess you become more conscious and present in your
Yeah.
reality, but then you also use the word shedding,
Mm.
and it's really just unlearning
Yeah,
what's not you.
unlearning, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and that I find that a funny concept because we imagine enlightenment to be like a raising, and it is like a raising of your vibration,
Mm.
but it's really also just about becoming like more grounded and like actually coming down into the
For
experience.
sure, there was a certain point where I was chasing that enlightenment at the start of the journey, but then there was a certain point that it sort of become aware to me that all the work is here. Not up in there, or whatever we're trying to achieve, but it's more in the everyday moment, and just in the now moment, and that is everyday life for sure. And
Yeah.
yeah, cultivating that intention.
So, for whatever reason, like I just want to dive into that sort of topic with you. Like I feel like you've got so much to share there. Like why is, say, raising your vibration important? Why is it important to like go through this awakening process?
I think just to get into the best version of ourselves, and how we could be um, of service to what we truly want. Like
Mm,
if we I'm lost. Sorry.
that's okay.
Yeah.
That's right. Take a breath.
Yeah.
That's all right. I can talk about why I think it's important.
Sure.
Yeah. So I feel like, oh, yeah, that
That's happening to me
it's
too.
a
I'm just
big
blanking.
question.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
They're very big.
awakening is important because, like, I think if you're not sort of, because this is the thing, like, there's no judgment if someone isn't awakened yet, and it's not their fault, and there's nothing wrong with that. So
Mm,
I always like to establish that.
mm,
But it's important to do because otherwise you're not really living for yourself, and then you're like you said, you're not actually able to be of service.
mm.
And yeah, that is actually a really big question.
Good
Like,
question. Yeah.
I think awakening is also
I would almost say,
being
yeah,
happier, but then
yeah,
even that, I
yeah.
mean,
I
yes,
almost say
but
it doesn't even matter.
mm,
I don't think it even. There's no end goal to be awakened or to be enlightened. But I don't think there's even. I don't think it even matters. People have completely fulfilling lives without getting in touch with spirituality, or that version of themselves. And I think at a certain point that it's yeah, it's not even needed. It's just it grows like an extra appreciation for life, which then allows things to move differently. But people can have that without being quote unquote enlightened or awake or whatever. They can just have their family and the things that matter to them, and they have a fully fulfilling life still. Like I don't think it's a prerequisite to a happy life, or anything like that. I think it's just
yeah,
for some people it's a part of the process, and other people it's just not. You know?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, to not put any judgment on that, I suppose is a good point too. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, that's really interesting. So then, because when you say it like that as well, I guess sort of awakening, it kind of is almost like an accident. Like you kind of stumble into it, I think. And
Yeah,
then
for
for
sure.
myself, like I loved that and I really embraced that journey.
Hmm.
And it felt like it was on my path. But at the same time, the incidents that got me there, yeah, felt a bit like an accident.
Mm. Yeah, I could agree for sure. at the start of my journey, I wasn't trying to get to any point or any sort of level of consciousness. It just seemed all coincidental and just sort of divinely laid out. I had, had no idea what was even going on when I first started getting into things like lucid dreaming and consciousness and stuff like that. It was just self exploration, and um, I think that's a big part of it, just the self exploration, and to have the awareness to do that can make life exponentially better for sure, and more,
Mm.
yeah, more fulfilling.
Excuse me. So I actually talked about lucid dreaming in like the second episode.
Hmm.
So was that a gateway for you? And like,
Yeah.
can you share what happened for you?
So I read about it probably back in 2014 or 15, and um, I started dabbling around with this guy on YouTube called Giz Edwards. He did his dissertation for his university or whatever on states of consciousness and sleep deprivation and all those things about lucid dreaming and stuff. So I sort of followed a lot of his techniques and had some experiences for myself, which were pretty amazing. Like I started out with the dream journal and trying to build my dream recall and stuff like that, and then to full have an actual middle of the night, sort of you get up and write your dreams down and you go back in, then you start using the techniques to fall back asleep and fall into
Mm.
lucidity and stuff like that in your dream. I started mucking around with that, which sort of led to a lot of meditation and stuff in those moments of, have to sitting still and letting your body fall asleep, etc., etc. And I had this one experience that when I went back to sleep, um, I was, I found myself like vibrating. I don't know how to explain this, but I was just vibrating. Everything felt like it was buzzing, and I couldn't see. When you see those movies and it's like a big white room, and it's hard to tell where the edges of the room are and things like that.
Yeah.
Everything was just like that, but it was all gold. It was just all
Oh.
gold, and I remember sort of waking back up again, being all excited, and oh, I finally did it, I finally did it. And then from there, it was just went hard into it. And then I got into the altered states of consciousness um, and the binaural beats and stuff like that. And then from there, I sort of found psychedelics and started to alter my own consciousness at will, kind of thing, instead of having to fall asleep every night and things like
Yeah.
that. And then which led to uncovering truths about myself, about the universe, and yeah, and it just sort of snowballed from there. It's been a big journey from there.
Wow.
Mm.
Hello, beautiful people. Excuse me while I interrupt this podcast because I have to tell you about my next offer. This program is going to be the most fucking fun you have ever had. This program is going to change how you show up in your life and how you show up in your business, all by having more fun, following your joy, channeling your creativity. I know, it already sounds amazing. As you know, I have completely changed the way that I show up in my life and in my business recently. I took a step back and I said, I'm just going to master my craft and follow my passion. And since then, since I made that decision a few months ago, I started working at the markets. I've had people coming to me from word of mouth. I've had clients coming back. I have started this whole podcast during a time when I said, I'm just going to follow my joy. So, from purely focusing on what makes me happy, so many things have fallen into place. And that is what we're going to do in this program. We're just going to focus on what is fun to you, how you want to express yourself, how you desire to be seen, how you want to be creative and put yourself out there. And fucking trust me, bitch, as a result, everything else will fall into place. This is true magnetism, true embodiment and receivership. Instead of trying to micromanage the universe, we're just going to relax into who you are and the essence of your being. And you're going to let the universe bring those opportunities to you. Let the universe do the hard work. Trust me, the more that you live in joy, which is exactly what we're going to channel, the universe will bring the flow, the abundance, the trust, the money, the clients, all the things that come with this. So this program is 12 weeks. It's going to run in 2023. We'll take a break and it will finish in 2024. So you can glide into next year as your most expansive, abundant, embodied, and divine self. I know, it's going to be fucking amazing. This program is called Flow Living. Keep your eyes open because I'll have more information coming soon. But If you already know that you're interested, send me a message on Instagram. If you get in early, you get the most flexible payment options. And if you join me before October, you will also get a private call with me where we can go deep and set this intention and do the healing work and open you up to receive. This is literally effortless fucking receivership, effortless expansion, effortless abundance. So, flow living. If you're keen, send me a message. I would love to work with you. And now let's go back into the podcast.
Mm.
Yeah, so from lucid dreaming, like you learn more about altered consciousness. And I'm curious, like, I can say for myself, like when I started to lucid dream, I was like, yo, this reality is the same. Like if I want something, I can kind of call it in, or like started to, carry across the rules.
Yep.
How did you know that it was important to practice this? Or like why did you feel called to that?
That's what I mean. At the time, I had no idea. Part of me feels like it was some form of escapism, because I
Mm,
was going through some mental health issues and a bit of depression and stuff like that. So it was sort of, I guess it was a life away from the life that I was living, but then the integration process starts happening, and then you kind of, yeah, as you said, it's much the same. It's just our own subconscious and stuff like that. So I was made aware of some things, and from there, spending more time alone and just and really sitting with these things helped me to move through them in this 3D world as well. You know,
yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
That's really powerful because then it's like you were helping yourself and you
yeah,
didn't even know it. And a part of me
yeah.
is like, oh, I wonder if that's, your higher self, like
Future
actually
self or
already
higher self.
guiding you.
Exactly, yeah. Future self or higher self or something like that. Yeah. Yeah, but
Um,
I had no goals or no expectations of it. It was something that I just found very interesting and fun at the time.
mm,
But yeah, after a while, it sort of became more of a practice and more of a thing that I was feel like I was feeling like I was being called to do. I don't know what by higher self, source, whatever you want to call it. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, it's been a bit of a journey since then for sure.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I just want to share something that I think is interesting. The reasons that got you into it, like, going through some things, it was fun, possibly escapism.
Hmm.
For me, I was like, wow, I can dream at night. I should be productive and I should be practicing that
Mm.
because that is valuable time that I could be getting better at something. I look
Well,
back and like, wow, I was
exactly
such a
right.
work addict.
Exactly right.
Like,
The things that you do in your dream actually they've done studies on this. So if you dream about lucid dreaming and you choose to say practice piano or practice dancing or whatever like that, it does translate over to this when we are awake. We can wake up and our brain has practiced that skill in our sleep. So it can be quite effective in that regard too. So
yeah, it's pretty
mm,
cool.
pretty rad.
If it is pretty rad. Where do you think we go? Like, do you think that dreams are purely subconscious or also like traveling to other realms and things like that?
I believe it has a bit of both. I think it's our subconscious perception of those realms. Whether um, so when first started, I had no idea where I was going or what I was doing. But sort of as my understanding of that sort of developed, you start to understand more about what you're doing when you're there, in that place, and where you're at. But yeah, still a mystery that sort of eludes me. I've read a little bit about it, but it's sort of, yeah, it's, I don't know. Still don't know.
Mm,
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both though. Mm,
mm.
mm,
Me too. And
yeah,
I love reading and investigating like all of these topics, but I'm also almost cautious to go too far into the knowledge base of things because if
yeah,
someone's like, this realm is this realm is this, and they label it, I'm like,
yeah,
well, it's still your interpretation
yeah.
and
It's all subjective. Yeah, you lose that subjective, that subject sort of, you lose your subjective stance on it. If it's already done, then what's the point of exploring? You're individual. You have your
mm,
own space, your own subconscious, and it's all about exploring that, not you know being somewhere someone else has been or taking their opinion as fact and stuff like that. It's don't listen to other people. Just go find out. You know,
yeah.
yeah, go find out what it is to you. That's what I mean. It's sort of half of what we subconsciously perceive, And maybe there is some science about it being another realm or something like that as well. But everyone's interpretation of that is going to be different, you know. And I think at the end of the day, it's all about exploring your interpretation, your subjective reality, and yeah, your own subconscious.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel through my journey, I've recognized how much is subjective, but not just from, the woo woo area like lucid dreaming and spirituality and whatnot, but also like into this reality. And, say you get a published study. I'm like, well, it still depends on who the researchers were, what they were looking for, the group of people that signed up. Like there is always going to be an element of subjectivity to it.
Yeah, yeah,
And additionally, like I started learning French, so I'm learning another language. And I feel like they're really just more words.
hmm
Like it no longer feels like a huge barrier that it's another language. I'm like, they're just different words. And it's made me realize how much every single word we use is also subjective.
yeah, yeah, true.
Like, like if I said, even if I said, oh, she was radiant, someone might interpret that to be like a really bubbly personality, and someone else might interpret that to be like, oh, she has great skin, or, whatever, loose
Yeah,
concept.
yeah, that's true. Everyone has their own bias and their own idea of how they're going to perceive it. Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
like everything subjective
yeah.
to me. Cool. Okay, so then can you just share with us, like, so your journey then, you said you went from lucid dreaming, a little bit of psychedelics, there was
hmm
obviously healing there as well.
Yeah.
How did you move through those sort of layers?
Um, Clunky sometimes. Clunky,
Clunky.
yeah, clunky sometimes. Sometimes it got pretty rough, and when things, pop up that you need to process, that can be quite difficult. Um, but I think it's just that's what sort of drove me to learn certain practices that help to make that transition easier, like meditation and things like that. It does help, and just having a better spiritual understanding of the fact that we all have this stuff that we have to work through eventually,
Mm,
on some level, some worse than others, but um, just being having more conscious practices that are serving the intention of that, rather than self sabotage or just unconscious behaviors. Just sort of, yeah, it's quite difficult sometimes when things pop up and you have to make space for them, though, But just doing that is a massive help. Yeah,
mm. Yeah, anytime big stuff has come up for me, it's just been like unavoidable, like a
yeah,
brick wall. And
yeah,
it's like, well, I can't really just continue as
yeah.
I was because,
Just
yeah.
courage. It's just courage. I think so at the boiling point of it, it's just courage to move forward. Not letting the fear keep you stuck. Making the big
Mm,
changes. I've left relationships. Stopped talking to certain family members and severed some connections because of wasn't serving me and my journey. And just being more aware of that and getting more in line with what's more in alignment with what's coming for us, even if we have a hazy perception of that at the time. We
mm.
have to trust the intuition and know that it's guiding us towards what it's guiding us towards, and it's for a purpose. And yeah, and just trusting the process, for sure.
Yeah. And I'm curious, like, I had in New Age spirituality, I feel like they often say, we have to experience certain traumas to be like lessons, and that's how we become who we are, and all the things. And I
Mhm.
had a friend recently say she doesn't believe that anymore. Like, she
Yeah,
doesn't believe that we need any trauma. And, like,
yep,
yeah, what do you kind of think of that?
agree. I think that the trauma that people experience can, you don't need to have experience to experience trauma to grow as a human and to. I think that is part of the shedding I was talking about earlier. Some of the mindsets that I developed from trauma, um, uh, you know, could have even got in the way for a longer period of time than it needed to be. And that was part of the work, was to unpack and unfold, and sort of organize some of those things that I'd learned from my traumas and stuff like that. But I don't think it was a necessity to get to where I'm at. for my
Mm,
individual journey that I'm at now, I feel like it was a necessary part. But I don't think it's a requirement, to have trauma and experience trauma. I think that um, is almost detrimental to getting closer to our higher self. It can cause division for years at a time before we can unpack it and get into it. So I think it's a blessing for these people not to have trauma if they don't have any, or if they don't have any, capital T trauma or anything like that.
mm,
I think it
mm,
could almost be a blessing. I think we should get rid of the idea of um, that whole idea of needing trauma to grow from it. But as they say, it's like the deeper the seed gets planted, the further it grows. The more. So it's hard to say. I
mm.
don't know. Mm.
Yeah, I mean, there is no like one answer because then,
Yeah, it's a subjective sort of it again as well. Because
yeah,
yeah, you can be grateful for what it's taught you and stuff like that. But what would have been better is if it didn't happen at all.
yeah,
From a personal experience. From
yeah. It's so odd to me because I have some big capital T trauma, and then I have some little thing that, a parent said to me and it cut me so deep. And I'm like, wow, it's so random how it comes about, and like what would life be if we didn't have those moments? Like it's hard to conceptualize, I
Yeah,
suppose.
I don't think we'd, maybe, yeah, I don't know. That's a tricky one because, you kind of have to be aware that it happened and that we do grow from it, and it's hard not to be grateful from that growth, for the growth that did happen. But um, it's hard to say if I'd be in the same place now if I didn't have all those lessons before I, turned 30 or before I turned 25 or things
Mm,
like that, and if I would still be, in those same cycles of sabotage or just unconsciousness, in general. Um, so yeah, that's a tricky question. Yeah, it's hard not to be grateful for where I'm at, but yeah,
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 because I also agree that we don't deserve it and we don't have to
yeah,
have that point of view. But
yeah.
then I am like, what would the Earth game be like if that
Mm,
wasn't there? And like, I
yeah,
truly probably couldn't tell you. Like, I've never, yeah,
yeah,
had a place where there's like nothing like that.
yeah. I think it serves um, a purpose for, like, if you think about us all being receivers of the source consciousness. I think that it's the source consciousness itself is trying to learn as much as it can. Um, so I think that
Mm,
the experiences that we experience, trauma or awakening or whatever, it's all just another perspective, an individual, unique perspective for the source consciousness to gain knowledge and wisdom and information about what's going on here in the mind and body.
mm.
Mm, mm.
Okay, that's taken me somewhere else because now I want to ask you, like, how do you perceive source consciousness? Yeah, I have more, but one question at a time.
Um, I see source consciousness as um, like a godhead for all of our consciousness. Like it all sort of like we're all receivers for this consciousness, and sometimes we got a better signal, or some days we don't have a better signal, or I think we're all
Mm,
tapped into the same thing here. The self awareness that we're even here to begin with, is. Um, I believe consciousness to be sort of God. So, like the giver of all life. If we didn't um, have consciousness, we'd be in a very different place. Um,
mm,
as a whole, as a collective. Um, so yeah, I've had some experiences with dimethyltryptamine, which has been pretty intense and has brought me to that source consciousness that it all sort of just comes from love and light. I don't know if that sounds really cheesy, but yeah, I think it's
no, it's
just
cool.
just love. Yeah, at the most fundamental level, I think that source consciousness is just love. And sometimes we have life experiences that separate us from that. But
Mm,
I think the whole goal is just to get back to love and just love each other unconditionally, or you know, as best we can.
mm.
Yeah.
Would you like to share one of those experiences? I would love to know, but it's
Ooh,
up to you.
they're hard to describe in words. Yeah. They're really, really hard to describe in words. But for anyone that doesn't really know what dimethyltryptamine is, it's kind of, in my opinion, just a gateway straight to meeting this source consciousness and interacting with it. Yeah, on a core level, I think it's just a direct line to God and consciousness. However you can perceive that, just
Yeah.
yeah, it's really
I've actually never done,
yeah,
yeah, I've never done that one.
yeah,
I'll get around to it, I'm sure.
yeah.
Did you walk away from that like, how do I embody this unconditional love more often?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Um, and that's the same thing again about getting to those practices that create that space of being able to love and love myself and love the whole process and not, you know, look at it through the perspectives that I learned from growing up and things like that. It's just, it was one of the many parts that helped me sort of see um, life for what it is and consciousness for what it is. Yeah, I don't know how to, yeah, I don't know how to explain that one, but
Wow.
yeah.
I find that this thought of unconditional love like an interesting topic because I think that I'm a very loving person. I believe I'm a very loving person. And it's definitely gotten me into hot water on many an occasion where in the whatever's happening, I am actually forgiving the person as we do it. Or like, oh, they didn't mean that. Or other times I've been around people that ended up actually being dangerous to me. I would be saying in the moment, I can see that this has been built into them. It's not their fault. They are doing this because they don't know how to connect with me otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And then after, I'm like, wow, I really should have removed myself
Mm,
from that situation. And like, I'm putting it lightly. I have so many crazy stories.
yeah,
But it's funny because like, I still think the things that I were perceiving are true. Like I was actually picking up on their trauma and their patterns.
yeah.
But,
Was it the
you
most
have to,
loving thing for you to do for yourself to stick around and have that empathy and that that sometimes that can get you in hot water. Maybe it was
mm,
more of a loving yourself moment. Instead of loving
yeah,
having the forgiveness and stuff and lovingness for the other person. Mm. I
yes.
mean,
And
forgiveness is a big part of it for sure, but yeah, I think we need to point that love at ourselves first sometimes. Yeah, that unconditional
yeah.
love.
And it just is then like interesting to me as to how we practice that. And it's that
Mm.
classic thing of like, okay, you can love everyone, but that doesn't mean that you're a doormat. Like you
Yeah,
need to
exactly.
stick up for yourself.
Yeah, we have to have boundaries and protect our energy and stuff like that too. So, mm.
How would you sort of describe unconditional love? What does that mean to you?
I think that comes down to the what I was saying before, how we all have this consciousness in us, and to see that in other people, whether they're further along in their journey or still unconsciously repeating behaviors and stuff like that. Um, I think that is just to see people as not who they are, but where they're at. You know what I mean?
Mm,
And to just move accordingly. You don't have to judge people or blame or all these other things, but just to understand that we all are on the same journey at some level. And to
mm,
see the people as their higher self rather than not delusionally, but just to be aware of it, and to give them grace in that
mm.
process. While also protecting your energy and our own energy and stuff like that. But I think grace is a good way of putting it. Just sort of not having to put up with things, but just being aware of and and yeah, just moving accordingly. That they have that in them as well, whether they're disconnected from it or whatever. But it's sort of just to move accordingly like that. I think.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah.
I like that those words like move accordingly
Mm, yeah.
because yeah, and because unconditional love doesn't mean that you sort of expect someone to meet you where you're at or you want them to because as
Yeah.
soon as you're wanting them to
Yeah.
behave in a different way, you're actually wanting them to change.
Yeah, just loving them as they are, I suppose. But yeah, I guess that'd probably be the biggest one. Loving them as they are, and yeah, moving accordingly based on how that makes you feel. I suppose you know.
Mm.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, I'm just thinking how like the biggest thing for me, well, at the moment is like probably applying that to family, and it's like how can I show up in my truth and have my boundaries, and now like sharing how I, desire to be treated and heard, but then also having the flexibility that, they have people have different values and interests and are not, me not projecting onto them that they have to meet me in a certain place. um yeah, and like with some people in my family, I've been able to have really honest conversations and have a lot of healing there. And then other people, it's like the conversation doesn't need to be had.
Hmm.
Like when I see them, we just talk about the surface stuff, and like that's actually the love that they can offer in this moment, you
Yeah.
know?
Yep. Yeah, that's great. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm.
Family is always good fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
We both we're knowing laugh.
Yeah. Like
Actually, oh,
I've
you
sort
go.
of over the last, I don't know, 4 years or something like that. Me and my father haven't had the best relationship, due to some things happening when my mum passed away, back in 2018. But I think I was holding a lot of stuff against him, and to come to the conclusion that yeah, we're all sort of doing doing the best we can with what we've got, but to drastically to have a better relationship with him, I had to sort of drastically reduce those expectations. Just meet
Mm,
him where he was at rather than holding on to all the resentments of why can't you do this and why can't you be like this, and it was all stuff in me that I had to heal. But
yeah.
just to be able to love him where he's at, is made a huge difference in our relationship, and I'm grateful for that. But it's just yeah, it wouldn't have happened without just unconditionally loving him, I suppose.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thank you for sharing that.
So,
Yeah, it's interesting because like I also took a break from certain members in my family where I was like, I feel so deeply rejected and unwanted in this
yeah.
space in this moment
Yeah.
that it's actually, unloving to put myself in that situation.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And then, yeah, for myself now, I've had conversations with some people there and it's been deeply healing.
Hmm.
We've both come into it with more understanding. But like I mentioned before, like in some cases, I've had to let go of like, okay, I'm actually not being rejected in this space. There's just a true not understanding, and I am now going to be okay with that.
Hmm. Yeah. 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 For sure. Being okay
Yeah.
with being understood, or things like that is, yeah, that's a good one. Mm.
Yeah, I think also in certain relationships, because we've been deep in the healing work and like we've been in the trenches and faced ourselves and things with some people, and not necessarily family, like all sorts of people, you can sense that there's probably some stuff from the past that needs to perhaps be discussed or talked about or something.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've made that sort of offer with people and they're like, "No, everything's all good."
Which is
And then you
triggering, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like, because I wish perhaps we could be closer or move past that because I can sense it. But for me, also, I suppose maturing, being like, well, you know what? I've offered, my door's open, and it's not for me to carry. Like, I can sense that there might be something there, but I actually have to let that go.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would agree. Um, yeah, this is a perfect example. Like I've got my brother at the moment. He's going through some mental health stuff, and um, he has a hard time talking about it. Some stuff that we went through in our childhood and as brothers and stuff. Which I can sense the same thing as some stuff that we need to talk about. But I think it comes down to that grace and just being like, yeah, he'll talk about it when maybe never, but when he's ready to. And I think that's, there's a certain point I've made him aware of that. That I want to talk about some things, and what, because I can give him my side of the story, and get that off my chest for sure.
Mm,
Um, but at the end of the day, you can't force people to be where you want them to be, or or talk about some things they're not ready to, or not ready to be made aware of, or things like that. It's sort of a tricky one. Yeah, letting go. It's hard.
Yeah.
Mm,
And just to add to that as well, like I've seen certain people relying on their coping mechanisms,
mm,
and in this moment, I'm not going to say what they are, but like, I have an understanding of addictions, and I've had several addictions in my life,
mm,
from work to, drug use, and like I can own that.
mm,
And I see it in other people. And sometimes people will come to me and be like, we have to stop this person from doing that. They shouldn't be doing that anymore. We need to change that. And it's like, we actually just need to love and support them, because
yeah.
what they're doing, because I've been there and understand it, like that's not the problem. Like they don't feel, loved. And
Mm,
so, and we also can't say force them to go to therapy or talk about whatever it is for them.
yeah. We can just be there for
Yeah.
them as a container, a safe place, or a space that they can, yeah, confide in when they're ready. I suppose when it comes to, but yeah,
Mm,
just loving them, and not holding unrealistic standards, and yeah,
mm,
and just being an example of it. And when the time comes, when they feel they are called to talk about it, just being there, and loving them through it, I think is important. But we'll end up causing ourselves suffering trying to control things, or force people to talk about things they're not ready to. It's kind of path of least resistance.
yeah.
Mm. Mm.
It's interesting that you just said that, because we were talking about the path of least resistance in the last
Oh,
episode and
right.
what that meant to us. I just
Yeah.
find that interesting. Um, cool. So, do you think that we choose our family, or do you think yeah, do you have any theories there?
Hmm.
Or like soul family, things like that?
Soul family for sure. I don't know if we have a conscious choice of that, but soul family are, I believe, chosen before we get here. There's people that we've been incarnating with, whether they're on the other side of the planet, or here in the backyard, or whatever. Um, soul family, I believe, that we choose, um, but we obviously don't remember. That's why we feel so called to them. It's just sort of like
Mm,
such a intuitively uh, intuitive. It's very intuitive. You just sort of know when you talk to them. But it's hard to say, because I do believe we choose to come here, but I'm not sure if we choose to be born in maybe the family that we're born in. And I think that's part of the work too. Is yeah, just to accept that, and maybe love it regardless. I don't know,
mm.
but I do believe that we choose our soul family. Like, yeah, I think that.
So
Yeah.
you're saying soul family, like could be anyone?
Yeah, yeah, it could be anyone.
Yeah.
It could be anyone. I have a good mate over in Detroit. He's from Nebraska, in the US. But ever since we linked up, it's just been, yeah, it's been a knowing that we're meant to be in each other's journey, and through thick and thin, no matter what happens. And we've had some pretty in depth conversations that I've never had with anybody else.
Mm,
Yeah, and it just feels so divinely led. You know that we're meant to be in each other's lives. Um, but I'm trying to think about the family, like our immediate family, uh, and maybe we chose to undergo the tests and stuff to be born into families that have conflict, or trauma, or something like that. Yeah, I'm not sure if we exactly choose that, but if it's maybe just luck of the draw where we end up. I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, but soul family, I definitely believe as we cultivate our awareness, that becomes much more apparent of who we're meant to have in our lives. And yeah, that's a conscious choice, to
Mm,
not be, to love them unconditionally, and not be triggered out of being into close relationships with them. Mm.
yeah.
Mm.
I feel like when I was younger, I've always been very social and like highly, highly valued my friendships. And so I always had sort of a solid group, thought that, would be friends forever and things like that. And then went through my healing process. There was a shedding of
Mm.
friendships. And then it was very much like, I don't know anyone else that shares my thoughts and values and things.
Yeah, yeah.
And over time, more people have come into my life, but there has still continued to be a level of flow, people coming in and out. And I feel now that I meet not necessarily what we might call soul family, but like I feel I meet really aligned people quite regularly.
Yeah.
And that always just blows my mind because in the past it felt like friendship was so scarce, I guess, and so it was
Hmm.
so highly valued.
Hmm.
And now I'm like, I meet people all the time that have this stuff in common with me, even though, there might be less of us than like the general population.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I get that. Yeah.
I don't know, I
Yep.
find that interesting.
That is interesting.
What do you think of like the idea that this idea that like say light workers, I don't care much for that label, but I'd say, well, I
Mm.
suppose I'm a light worker. I believe I'm here to help.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think of the idea that we get born into families that, we're the ones responsible for sort of breaking that generational cycle of trauma?
Um, feels true to me. Yeah, feels true to me. I didn't ask to be. I don't think I asked to be responsible for breaking all the the generational stuff and the curses and stuff like that, or whatever you want to call them.
Mm.
I just feel like I want to. I just want to, and I think yeah, that's on some level a choice. Yeah,
Yeah, I like that. That's simple because
yeah,
I'm the same.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I was like gifted to do this, or I feel like everyone has the opportunity to do it. It's just whether or not you want to. Yeah,
Mm.
how dedicated you are to that, I think, is yeah. Mm.
Mm.
And as we get closer to that, um, to our source or our higher self or whatever, I think that just becomes more and more of a no-brainer. You know. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We get less away from the things that separate us from that, and closer to the what yeah really wants to break free of the generational traumas and curses and whatever you want to call them. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
Now I know this is going to be kind of a big question, but I'm just thinking about like how far you have come through your own traumas and families and to be here now and the awakening process you've had yourself. And I know, you're about to sort of have like a family. How is your purpose sort of shifting? Like, is your life view shifting, or does this change how you show up? Like, it seems like a whole new journey is about to start.
Um, yeah, new chapter. New chapter is about to start, I think. And I think it's all um, intertwined on a level that I can't really comprehend. But
Mm.
yeah, I would agree. It's all part of the journey. It's going to turn me into a more loving and caring person, having a daughter, especially. And I think that um, is just an opportunity to grow and to be a better version of ourselves, and any more motivation to not pass those things down and to be the best version of myself and to be of service to my family and all these things. I think it's just more and more of an opportunity. You know.
Mm.
Mm,
That's so beautiful.
mm,
I want to know, like, I'm not sure how to word this, like, being a man and having, being in your masculine, obviously we have both energies,
mm-hmm.
and going through this healing process, like, is there something that, how do I word this? Like, do you have any views on like at the masculine energy in society? Because say, I think that we need more positive masculine energy and like to celebrate that. And yeah, it's a tricky conversation as a whole, but I feel like um for example, like I get approached regularly by men that make me feel very unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
Or not very unsafe, but I'm like, no, thank you. This doesn't feel good to me. And it's rare that there are men that I do feel safe around.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you have any thoughts on how we can shift that as a society or? Yeah, I know that's not a clear question.
Hmm. I wonder if it has something to do with integrating the opposite.
Like
In,
masculine integrating the feminine.
yeah, yeah, I think so. Maybe, um, yeah, to be able to see it from the other point of view, maybe, and to sort of
Mm,
yeah have that um, integrated perspective. I think would probably be the best way to describe that. Um, people get too much in this or too much in that, whatever you want to call that, um, into the masculine or feminine, and it can kind of. Sorry, my cat's going nuts in the. I don't know if she's
I
like,
only just heard. It's okay.
yeah, okay.
It adds to the vibe.
Yeah, yeah. I think it has something to do with integrating parts of the opposite and not um, suppressing that. I think the passing of my
Mm,
mum had a lot to do with. Where it had made a lot of changes in me, and getting her perspective on things, um, and just trying to get to know her better towards the end of her life, and what she held as values and things like that. Um, Made a huge difference to the person I was, and having such a close relationship with her growing up as well. I felt like I was a lot more in my feminine growing up, and that's what made me so sensitive and things like this growing up.
mm,
To be honest, it's been more of a challenge to integrate my masculine side than it has been my feminine side, and I think that might have something to do with that. I think as growing up as boys, we get pushed a lot of masculine ways of being to cope, rather than,
mm,
and that sort of causes us to separate a lot from our feelings and our bodies and things like that when we grow up. And I think being more in touch with the feminine really does um, help with that. Get more in tune with who we are, and to be able to see it as a whole perspective, rather than just the world should be like this and masculine, and we should. But I believe both. I believe I need discipline, but I also
mm-hmm.
need to be creative and to flow. So it's an integrated um, system. I think that, and we can get out of touch with one or the other, which can put us on either end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, I've always found the balance in of masculine and feminine society like an interesting topic
mm,
because I have a lot of empathy for men and the masculine in the sense that they all, we've equally had expectations put on us since we were young. Like, I
mhm.
definitely feel as a woman that I was sort of trained to be more submissive and people pleasing,
Yeah,
and men to be more perhaps assertive and, suppress your feelings.
yeah,
And in that sense, like just for this example, the topic of pornography leading to issues, if young boys are exposed to that and it alters things and then alters their path, I'm like, well, if they were children when they were exposed, that's not their fault.
hmm
And so, and then obviously when we get older, it is every individual's responsibility to do the work.
yeah,
But if we're in a society as a whole where young boys have been changed in that way, like that's really like we can't blame the children.
yeah. You can't
That's
blame the individual for sure. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I get that. Yeah,
So when we are so, I don't know, there's just so much to talk about there. Like when we're really aggressive, or I see women, it goes both ways, but
yeah,
I see like maybe women online being just, all men are trash. I'm like, well, they're like wounded children really at the end of
yeah,
the day, just as much as the woman that is, say, very demanding or controlling, or a work addict that's hyper independent. That's also trauma responses, like
yeah, for
from
sure.
when they were a kid.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree. Yeah, I would agree. Um, I was one of those kids that got exposed to pornography really young. I had an older brother and we had, for some reason, back when I was in, like, I think it was prep, was the first time I seen pornography, which is, that's not on for me. Like, that's not
Mm,
right. So I think growing up, it's easily misconstrued, the relationship between men and female, because of being exposed to things so young. And that was a big part of that growth and stuff at the start of my journey, was to break down some of the beliefs about that, and to, to really get back to us all being equal, and not objectifying women, not treating them like sex objects, things like this. There's a lot of the stuff that young boys are trained, well, not trained, but just, programmed to believe, and that causes even
Yeah.
more separation. Yeah, for
Mm.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I was exposed to pornography super young as well. Like I saw like a just a box of something like when I was very young, and I remember being like, this is wrong, and I like didn't tell anyone. And then as I
Yeah.
got older and then came across it in different ways, I would actually have like trauma responses, like have a physical shutdown, or like go and
Yeah.
like hide under the covers.
Yeah.
Which, and then for so long, I was like, why am I so fucking weird? Like, people like this. What's wrong with me?
Mm.
And then to be like, oh, it's actually this thing.
Yeah.
Um, and this isn't funny, but like, I feel not that I was innocent, but like, that's, for example, that never interested me. Like, porn never interested me.
Mhm.
And I look back now when I was in high school, and I'm like, holy shit, men were saying things to me all the time that was like porn based, or like guys in high school asking about my sex life and stuff, which was like non existent then. And at the time, I just was like, haha. Like it was straight over my head. And
Yeah.
now I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
Mm. I think a lot of it too is the another big bad thing about being exposed to pornography so young is you learn intimacy in secret. You know, like you learn intimacy in secret rather than opening up to people around you, which can
Mm,
also be a bad thing, or an undesirable thing, for living. It creates a disconnect from our intimacy, from being with another human to being with a screen, or to things like that, and it can also be kind of misleading as well, and just sort of, yeah, because sex is a divine act. It's supposed to be a connection to God and Source, and our higher selves and consciousness and all those sorts of things. And I think it
mm-hmm.
can be easily, yeah, just maybe separated from that because of what we experience, and yeah, just being too young and not knowing what's going on, and not knowing what it is, and yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I did a podcast with a friend, Pete Tansley, like in my old podcast, and he talked about the same thing and how like getting introduced to porn and intimacy, I suppose, in that way,
Yeah.
like it creates like so much shame.
Yeah, that's exactly
And
what I'm trying to talk about. Yeah, yeah,
mm-hmm,
exactly what I mean. It creates a lot of shame, which then stops you from opening up and being so vulnerable about certain things later in life. For sure. Yeah, I would agree.
yeah, I feel like because a part of me is like, well, how can we do things sort of differently? And my only thought at this moment is, I had a lot of sex education, which is amazing. So I knew
Yeah.
about like puberty and sexual safety and all that.
Yeah.
And I feel there should be an intimacy element, or like, what does it feel like when it is consensual and it does feel good to you, and how to trust your gut.
Hmm.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel there should just be discussion around that when, I don't know, when people are like teenagers.
So more guidance in that area for sure would be
Yeah.
a good thing for the collective, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
Okay, and I want to come back to one more thing,
Hmm.
because you said you've had experiences where you've really connected with the divine, meditation, DMT,
Yeah.
sex
Nice.
is another way,
Yeah, mushrooms,
mushrooms.
yeah, all the above.
Yeah.
I haven't done ayahuasca yet, which has been, um, I think, is one of the ones that happens and you get led to it when you're ready for it.
Mm,
Yeah, same as DMT. It sort of, it finds you,
yeah.
and yeah, that was the biggest thing. It was something that I'd always known about for a long time, but the opportunity to try it never really popped up, and I'm glad it didn't, because it's a pretty out there experience until I kind of knew what to make of it. Had to have some sort of understanding about what was happening, or things like that. But yeah. Mm.
Yeah, so cool. And I agree that we get led to it. And I know that more now than
Yeah,
ever.
for sure.
Um, oh, but what was my question? Because we were talking about something recently, like that this idea that we the divine is so beautiful, say like light or love, it's so beautiful that we actually shy away from it. And that in
Mm.
itself, this idea that we were talking about, like the actual pulling away from the light, because yeah, like that in itself can cause us to die, where perhaps we might not die if
A
we were,
perception. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
connected like all the time.
Yeah. So if you go back to spirit, mind, and body, the spirit, um, it's someone's mowing outside my room now. So hopefully that
That's
doesn't come
okay.
through too much. Um,
Nah, it's
so the
okay.
spirit is a perpetual thing. I think we get um, sort of gifted with the spirit when we get born into this 3D reality, and that sort of makes some perception deep down in our psyche of a separation, or when we're all of a sudden experiencing unconditional love as a soul or spirit, and then all of a sudden we get incarnated into this body in duality with the polarities of suffering and joy and all these sorts of things.
Mm,
And I think deep in our psyche there's some fear that or deep-seated guilt that we were banished from that, or that we've done something wrong to be put here in this dualistic sort of life,
mm-hmm.
and that causes a subconscious fear of that light. That if we experience it again, we'll be, judged or viewed as unworthy, or all these, etc., etc., which can make us fear our own light and connection to Source and God and stuff like that. For sure.
Wow, I just find this concept so interesting when you shared it with me. So, like,
Yeah.
the idea that we've been taken away from the light
Yeah.
to be here, and that in itself makes us fear the very thing that we were abandoned from. And
Yes.
that's
Exactly. Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
related to like the Adam and Eve story where they did something wrong and therefore they go into duality.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Or other people even view it as we're endowed with consciousness, and then that made us aware of the duality.
We were in what?
Endowed with consciousness, and then that makes us
Oh,
aware of the duality that we were maybe already in. Because I don't know if a deer or a bear or a fish knows that it's in duality, or if it's what it is, or if it even has self awareness or not.
mm,
And I think even that self awareness at some point causes this like a resentment for the gift.
mm,
You know what I mean? Some sort of resentment. But yeah, I think that somehow, yeah, it causes some sort of subconscious fear of the light. Because we feel like if we experience it again, we'll be judged and separated or killed or whatever. But our body, that comes from our body reincarnating over and over again. When our body
mm-hmm,
experiences death, it sort of it remembers and has some sort of memory in our DNA, or whatever's going on. So I think it's just to be able to view it as a whole rather than just the body and mind's perception of death. Um, for sure. I think that. Where was I going with this actually? But I
that's okay.
believe,
Oh,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's so much I want to say.
Okay, yeah. Go
I'm
for
like
it. Go
trying
for
to
it.
be quiet.
Okay, go for it.
Um, and I want to jump in. Our listeners, if you have any thought on that concept we've just shared, like please message me. We would love to know
Mm,
what you think of that. So there's so much that I want to say.
mm,
Um, firstly, about the light being, like having a bit of a fear of our own light. I 100% understand that, and
mm.
I'm pretty sure I touched on it in the last podcast, like with Holly,
Yeah.
because I remember, say I was early 20s, just working really hard to like buy a house. That was just my goal. That's all I thought there kind of was to do.
Hmm.
And then I started working with my first coach, and he was like, dream bigger. Like, what if you made $1 million or did this? And he showed me that it's actually quite possible.
Hmm.
And then I remember being like now that I know I can do that,
Mm.
that's kind of fucking scary.
Yeah.
And there's been layers to that as well. because I feel I've, say, come more into my power through evolutions, like consistently.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I think it's taken me some time to be grounded in how powerful I actually am, and willing to embrace that and continue. Because sometimes, I don't know, you actually do feel your own power and you're like, holy shit, like this
Yeah.
is, I don't know, it's like, whereas before it was, even though life was significantly harder,
Hmm.
it was kind of easy because you didn't,
Well, it's
there
easy to
was,
survive.
you
Yeah.
just, yeah, you just survive.
Yeah.
And then
100%.
when, yeah,
Yeah.
so I just get that.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of Leonard Orr talks a lot about the unconscious death urge, and he says there's a bunch of ways that we will limit ourselves to stop being um, as close to that love and light as possible. In brokenness, uh, no sex life. You'll say and things like this. Another one is what was the quote? Um, in my brokenness, I am. Actually, I'm gonna butcher this,
That's
but it's
okay.
more about taking care of yourself. Your own foundations of your life will get you closer to that. But there's lots of ways that we self sabotage because we subconsciously fear our own light,
Mm,
and to be closer to that. Um, yeah, for sure. And to get back to what I was saying before, yeah, the body goes through bunch of these incarnation cycles and has a bunch of this imprinted memory. But the spirit doesn't have that, So that's what I'm trying to say. We sort of we hold on to these things on a physical level, but metaphysically, it's almost misled to have that association with the metaphysical death being the death of our physical body, and we'll fear it till till the day we die.
mm.
But the whole practice of sometimes with the psychedelics is to have that metaphysical death so that you can break that association of getting closer to the light, and you come back and realize that you're not actually dying, and there's nothing to
Mm,
be afraid of when you do enter that light and that connection with source, and it's all just just love. And but our bodies don't know that. Our bodies,
mm.
we have to train our bodies to sort of get into alignment with that because of all these incarnation cycles that we hold on to, you know. Mm.
Yeah, so with this theory, like specifically, so it says the spirit has no memory of death, sort of thing, or no fear, but the body, in this particular theory, it said like the body knows when the soul comes in and then fears death because the body remembers death and remembers dying.
Yep.
And I wanted to sort of talk about that because it actually made me think of robots. like,
Mm.
and it made me think like it was almost suggesting that the body is the physical hardware and the matter
Yeah.
that actually exists before the soul was the suggestion. So it's like, wow, if the body, the matter exists and then the soul comes in and gives it life but then takes it away, I was like, wow, that just, it seems eerily similar to us turning on and off a computer.
Yeah. True. Yeah. Yeah. True.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I heard another person explain, David Icke it was, I was like really big in his stuff, how our body is like a VR headset. So in
Mhm.
this world, we actually put on a VR headset and then we go into the game and we get to play the game. And he
Yeah.
said your soul puts on the VR headset that is the physical body.
Hmm.
And I just
Yeah.
was like, damn,
Yeah.
what if we're robots?
Our body is like a limitation of what we are. It's not. Yeah, it's not the be all and end all of what we are. Like you can
Mm,
hear without ears, eardrums. You can taste without a mouth. You can see without eyeballs. So you can do these things. So what happened? Like even just the lucid dreaming proves that.
mm,
You're not like you got a piece of cake in your mouth in bed when you're dreaming. You can taste it even though you're dreaming without the taste buds. Without you can see things without your eyeballs. You can So I think that has to come from somewhere that isn't our body.
mm.
And that yeah.
That's so interesting. And something that helped me, I feel, to really understand that we're more than our bodies. Like, I heard this a long time ago, but that the soul isn't in the body, the soul's around the body and like much bigger than. And I was like, oh, and as soon as I heard that, it clicked for me, yeah, on
Mm-hmm.
different levels.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
I would just add as well, like, because you just mentioned how we can see without having like eyeballs. Um, for me now, saying that I'm psychic, which again, I think we all really are at the end of the day, but just realizing that those little images that I see in my mind, which we might call our imagination, that's actually me visualizing energy or different aspects to this experience. And I suppose I just started to be like, oh, that's actually a part of my reality. That's
Hmm.
me in this dimension and another dimension at the same time.
Yep. Yep.
And like sometimes if
Mhm.
I'm, well, even literally just talking to someone, say we were talking about relationships, I might have a visual, and I think a lot of people would. I might have a visual of like an energy field and it merging together. Or I recently did like a reading for someone, and my visual was like, I said she was being held back in some way, and I saw like almost like a graph and then like a ball of energy like sinking into the graph.
Hmm.
And I explained it completely differently because obviously that visual wouldn't make any sense to her in that moment. But
Yep.
I personally think that that's a real thing that's happening, and I'm say seeing with my third eye.
Hmm.
But it's us, like
Mm.
that's actually us as human beings having
Yep.
those abilities.
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I think that, the saying of, when we die, our soul gets weighed against a feather, and then, I think that we carry those things around in our psyche or in our soul that we haven't really reached yet, or unpacked or dealt with, and that can, affect other people with our energy that we hold in our body and our aura and all those sorts of things. So, yeah, there's something to be said about that for sure. And you just maybe got a better grasp on perceiving that and interpreting it, um, than maybe someone else does. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I just want to share one thing, but then I just have to ask you a question about reincarnation, so don't let me
Mhm.
forget.
Okay.
But first of all, I just want to say, how you said like there's that idea that our soul gets weighed against a feather.
Mm.
And something that I think about a lot really is like essentially time and our experience. And so if time sort of is subjective, and there's only really the now moment, I'm a big believer in that the future and the past are happening at the same time.
Hmm.
And say if I tell a way that helped me to understand this is if I'm telling you a story and I'm remembering the story in my experience, that moment actually exists at the exact same time, and then it's like connected.
Yeah,
So
true.
anytime you tell a story or have a memory, they coexist together. It's
Hmm.
not actually in the past.
Yep.
And so I feel like the healing work is quite important, because it's about releasing the attachment to it, I suppose. So it still
Hmm.
exists, but energetically, you're not carrying
Mm.
all this, past stuff. So it just makes sense with being weighed next to a feather, because I
Hmm.
feel like the healing work is how we, yeah, release that stuff
Or,
instead
or
of
or
holding
perceive it,
all of it.
or perceive that stuff. How we perceive. I think the healing work allows us to get a totally different perspective on these things, which then helps us to release that attachment from to it or from it. Um,
Mm,
if the now moment is all there is, our perception of the past has a lot to do with that as well. I think, and what we're still carrying around with it. And then
yeah,
we feel lighter in the moment because of our changed perception. That's great. That's a goal, I suppose. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. To be able to, um, have a better idea of, or have a better, map for where we're trying to go into the future.
Mm,
You know, if we can change our perception and let go of the attachment, we can move forward in a better way. You know.
yeah,
Mm,
yes, yes.
mm.
And because when I think about that, like, and so I don't know if I'm just rambling, but I sort of share
Okay.
this thought.
Yeah.
Um, it's gonna be like that story about the wild sheep that was like irrelevant. I saw
Do that
Brad.
while I drink water.
Yeah,
Awesome.
sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, it's definitely relevant. But so I think people that, and I guess this comes back again like to why the healing work is important, because like we said at the start, you don't have to,
Yeah.
but why it's important, because I feel as I'm getting older or whatever, and then I witness the people around me, getting older as well. And if someone is carrying so much of the past,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing wrong with that. But I feel like, yeah, they can become really disconnected from the present, and then really
Yep.
disconnected from who they actually are. And I honestly feel I'm just going to say honestly, I think people can come really out of touch with reality.
Yeah.
And, you know, I try to be really honest and true, like in my life, and I'm willing to take ownership of where I've done wrong. And again, I was gonna say, like, I've had addictions and abusive part, like, I'm willing to talk
Mm-hmm.
about that. And if someone else, just as a rough example, say, doesn't want to accept that their relationship was not good for them
Mm-hmm.
and that it was actually really bad, and they sort of deny that, all of those denials stack up, and then they're living a life that's really, they're telling themselves it's one thing and it's actually the opposite thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like living that way can lead to essentially like a lot of mental health issues that our society like really glosses over.
Yeah, I think that's
Mm,
where, not to bring it up again, but this unconscious death urge comes into play again as well. We accumulate excess environmental energies that can become negative, and you'll see it in people that get grouchy and things like that. And I think that leads to fueling the psychological entity that is the unconscious death urge. Like if that is any anti-life thought, um, then that is what sort of manifests from that excess energy from our environment. And the ways you can sort of cleanse that energy is, Leonard Orr talks about showering twice a day because water purification,
mm,
fire purification, being near an open fire can help with all these build-ups of excess environmental energy that we're sort of taking on, and it can help reduce that those thoughts, the anti-life or self-sabotaging or disconnect from God or source.
yeah.
Yeah, some big ways to get back in touch with it there, but we definitely accumulate energy that can lead to mental health problems and
Mm.
depression and things like that for sure.
I'm just gonna say, repeat it in my own words to make sure I understood, because
Yeah,
I feel like it's complex. So you're saying like that the unconscious death urge or the anti-life thoughts are
yeah,
essentially like floating around us, and we get exposed, and so it's a good
yeah,
idea to cleanse ourselves, energetic hygiene, to detach from that. Okay, because
yes, for
I
sure.
fully
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating. We're talking about this in the last episode as well, where like, we want to take ownership for our reality as much as possible, but you also have to accept that we are exposed to other people's energies, and there's no
Yeah,
blame there, there's no judgment, but like,
yeah,
energetic hygiene is extremely important.
yeah, and it's our responsibility almost,
Mm,
to help alleviate those feelings of blame or or putting that
mm,
onto other people or judgment or other things like that. And that I think that comes into um, having the discipline with that will help with the unconditional love and not to hold on to resentments from gathering that energy in
yeah.
aspects of their life for sure. Yeah.
So then, like, I just love toying with the concept. So do you feel then, if we could say alleviate this unconscious death urge
Hmm.
and embrace our light fully and be comfortable with that, like, do you
Hmm.
think that we would not die, possibly? Or I know it's obviously just a
Um,
theory,
there
everyone listening.
has been something to be said about physical immortality. I haven't had much experience with obviously people that are the immortal or anything like that, but there has been cases of people that sometimes I've heard people meeting up with people in India and stuff like that are 2,000 years old or something.
What?
Yeah, I heard this from Leonard Orr, secondhand information, but
Yeah.
he talks about that almost all the people that he was researching had all these. They were doing all these practices like the spiritual cleansing and stuff like that, and he said that was a keystone to what helped them get to where they are. But um,
Whoa.
yeah, I'm not so sold on it myself. I haven't done so much research in it. Um, but I think that it will help at the very least to alleviate our own fear around dying for sure. Having better
Mm.
practices and um, so can you quickly remind me the question again?
Do you think it's possible that we could not die if we
Um,
fully embrace like divinity, like the
Potentially,
fear of? Yeah.
potentially, yeah. Yeah, but I think it's more of a, for me personally, it's more of a spirit thing, to give my next incarnation the best job I can and lighten the load from this
Mm.
life from this life rather to lighten the karmic load for the next incarnation that happens to get my purpose, the same purpose I've got here. It will
Mm.
be passed on to someone else when my body goes and if it goes, and just to ease that trauma from the incarnations and things like that,
Mm.
yeah. So and yeah, anyway, Karen.
Well, I just think it's so interesting because I've had similar thoughts, and like in when I was younger, I used to say do everything the doctor said. If I was sick, I was like, I need to go to hospital straight away. Sorry, to the doctors straight away, like to get medicine, or
Yeah.
if I need a surgery, just do as they say and get the surgery. And over time and through more holistic practices, like I've had a knee surgery that I now believe was unnecessary. And it could have healed naturally. And a better example is like I've sprained my ankles a few times, and
Yeah.
I sprained my ankle last year and it was like pretty bad, and the doctor there was like it'll take at least 6 weeks to heal.
Hmm.
And in that moment I was like, you know what, if I agree with you, then it will take that long. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that he did anything wrong,
Yeah.
not at all. But if I agree with you, it'll take that long. And I was like, fuck that. It will heal and it will be just as strong, if not stronger, as it was before. And
Hmm.
like a week later, it was totally fine. Continued with my strength training. And I just was like, I have the belief that I'm going to allow it to heal as good as it was before.
Hmm.
And my point in sharing that, and because it is, I'm very fit and healthy. Like my ankles are not an issue. Um, I believe that if that's possible, and that feeding into we create our own reality, that you can kind of keep renewing your body and allowing
Yeah.
that to happen. So with that point of view, and they've done studies and stuff that show, when you meditate and do this and that, you renew your cells.
Hmm.
So from that perspective, I'm like, it probably is possible.
Probably, yeah. I'd say so. Yeah.
Let's prove it, us
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. Um, I might have to quickly put a pause in if that's possible.
Yeah.
I really need to use the restroom.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, sure.
Is that okay?
Um, well, anyway, the last thing that I wanted to come back to is this idea of reincarnation,
Yeah.
because I personally more believe that there's kind of nothing else for us to do but just to
Mm.
keep having experiences, not necessarily
Yeah.
human, alien, other dimension, like whatever. I
Yes.
kind of think it's just the game we play.
Yeah.
But then I feel more with this theory of the unconscious death urge that that reincarnation is almost based on fear, and we could escape the cycle. And the word escape this cycle of reincarnation, I've seen it a lot.
Hmm.
So I just wonder, like, what's your perception on that?
Yeah, I would probably agree. I would probably agree that I think that um, yeah, we have work to do when we keep coming back. And I think that if we can ever get to a point that we reach connection with the divinity like that, and truly heal the things we need to heal about on this in this place or in this world or whatever we're in, that maybe it does transcend to somewhere else, or we just end up staying there. I'm not sure, but
Mm.
yeah, I'm not really sure. But yeah, I think that yeah, we all have work here to do, and as we shed those layers of work away to get more in touch with the divinity, that I think that we get closer and closer to, escaping samsara, what they say, the
Mm.
whole cycle of life. So yeah, maybe that's what the immortality stuff they talk about. It's all about. Um, could be, our souls live on as a separate entity to the source, or just continues going on alongside it instead of being incarnated back again. I'm not sure,
Whoa.
Mm.
I just find that difficult to wrap my head around because the when I first heard the idea escape reincarnation or like, you know, outgrow it even like
Hmm.
because you become enlightened or whatnot,
Hmm.
I don't fully like that idea because it makes me feel like there's a level of fear behind this life or like I have to hurry up and get somewhere or do more or if I don't do this I'll be reincarnated, which is bad.
I think that that gets into that whole the whole fear of it again. Yeah, you're right. Like it is like a fear of the incarnation cycle itself. Like we're going to come back again. Like someone up there is doing it to us.
Mm,
You know what I mean? But yeah, maybe it's not exactly the case, or yeah, maybe that fear is what keeps us coming back until we shed it. I don't know.
yeah.
I'm not sure, but because
I've t-
there's no fear in the unconditional love up there. There's no fear.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Mm.
I think we come back cuz it's like fun, but it reminds me
Mm.
I saw a meme where it had, you know, I don't know, it was like BDSM, so it was like the meme was somehow portraying like sex that involves pain and it was like my soul, give it to me, like I'm going back to earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like my soul must love coming here and getting this shit
Yeah.
kicked out of it.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
Me like, haha, I relate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting one, but yeah, I think it all pertains to what we have to learn. Yeah, I'm not really sure whether we choose to come here because we think it's fun or if it's, a big cosmic game.
Mm,
I believe at some point it's a big cosmic game. Like
mm-hmm.
nothing really matters or even really exists. Maybe this is just a big projection of consciousness itself. Yeah, it's hard to say, but um, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know whether we choose to
Mm,
come back here or if we just have work to do and yeah, maybe when we go back there, it does weigh our soul against the feather, and if it's as light as a feather, there's nothing more to learn. We've expanded our awareness to the point where we're not going to learn anything from another life, or that we incarnate and get wiped clean to get a whole new perspective on it, and that is just another way for Source to gain information on where we're at, because Source, I don't know if it's the creator of where we're at or if it can't experience it for itself. It needs an actual physical conduit to experience this.
mm.
And for it to learn and grow or experience infinite knowledge, it has to have like a chess piece in the game of life to sort of really grasp the concepts that we relay back to it. So I
Yeah,
think,
wow.
yeah, but I'm not sure when it ends, though. I have no idea.
Mm,
I guess we'll find out. But
wow.
yeah, I used to have a feeling like a goal to escape it and things like this, and but I think just accepting that who knows what happens, is a big part of that. Letting go of the fear,
Mm,
yeah. But if it happens, it's a blessing, It's
yeah.
a blessing and a total um, mathematical anomaly that we're even born, So it's
Mm,
it's pretty fantastical even in itself. But yeah, I believe it has something to do with relaying information back to the source over and over and over again from billions of different perspectives that are all unique and all have their own traumas that form their perception of reality, and that is somehow helping the hive mind of consciousness to um, elevate us all, or to, yeah, I'm not sure, but we
yeah.
definitely
No,
can't
that's
keep coming
cool.
back and back again and back again until who knows when. But yeah, we definitely keep coming back.
Yeah.
Like it's for
It,
punishment, I suppose.
it's a funny thought. I mean, I remember past lives. I remember several. I've been guided through them and things, and
Hmm.
I believe in them.
Yeah.
I would love to know again, like people listening, if you have any thoughts on. I'll type out some specific questions. I think I can attach them to the actual like Spotify.
Hmm.
We'll see around. Yeah, if our listeners think that we're trapped in a cycle or we come back for fun, I would
Mm.
love to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we will leave it there. This has been
Yeah.
so fucking good. Thank you so much for coming on
Thank you
and
for having me.
sharing your perspectives. So fun. And I actually just make a quick comment, everyone, like I love talking about these topics, but go and get grounded and be in gratitude you know, we're not trapped in this earth. I just want to say, because
Yeah,
sometimes that makes me a little uneasy. We're just playing with the concepts, but being
exactly.
here is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, yeah, awesome.
And if people want to find you, like, do you want to share anything, like Instagram or anything like that?
Yeah, I do a lot of music stuff. I'm a musician at heart, I suppose, and I do a lot of handpan work, and just I use it as an intuitive sort of guide through my own mental processes and thoughts and stuff to quiet my own mind. And that kind of comes through my playing sometimes, whether it's erratic or peaceful or whatever I'm feeling at the time. So if anyone's interested in handpan music or just just skateboarding and stuff, I'm into skateboarding. So if they're interested in that and consciousness and my own opinions on that and my own story, then yeah, follow me on Instagram if they like. Yeah.
Cool. I'll pop it in the bio,
Yeah,
the
sure. Yeah,
caption thing.
cool. All right.
Beautiful. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll
No
talk
worries.
again soon.
Yeah,
Bye.
great.
Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Brad. And if you have any thoughts that you want to share around the podcast or anything we spoke about, send me a message on Instagram. I love getting your messages, so please let me know. And now a reminder, if you're interested in flow living, my super abundant, fun, playful, sexy program, send me a message. This program is all about channeling your joy, fully expressing yourself, being the embodiment of everything that you desire, everything that you want to be, like really opening up your essence and moving into effortless receivership, letting things come to you, letting the universe bring the opportunities, bring the abundance, bring the money, bring the clients, whatever it is, all through living in joy. Really, by living your highest timeline, we're going to do it together. It's going to be so fucking fun, especially to set you up for 2024 and move into next year being that abundant, fully embodied divine goddess, totally magnetic. It's going to be amazing. If you're interested, get in early, get the most flexible payment options, and if you join before October, you get a private coaching call with me. So, Flow Living, send me a message on Instagram if you're keen, and I will see you here for the next podcast episode very soon. Much love. Bye.